Well, hello Instagrammers and YouTubers alike, and welcome back to Retro Direction. This is Michael, and thanks for tuning in. Now, today we're going to be looking at the second game in Sega Rally's Big Three. Yesterday we had Virtua Fighter 2. Now today we're having the Great Sega Rally. Now, first of all, we'll be talking about what makes this game so brilliant. Now, of course, it's got a few home editions. Besides the arcade mode, which we all know and love, we've got Time Attack, where you can choose any of the available cars, let's say available initially from the start, and you can race them on any of the available tracks, of which there are three. You've got the desert, which is based on savanna scenery, the forest course, which is kind of like South America, and the mountain course, which is racing through a town. It's actually based on a shorter version of the Monaco circuit. And now, if you go into car settings, you can do some very light tuning, and I mean light tuning. There's no simulation here. Let's say if you wanted to create a car, choose either the Toyota Celica or the Lancia Delta. But there you go. You can choose what transmission you want, how quick you want your handling, whether you want soft or hard tyres, depending on the surface you're racing on. Suspension speaks for itself. Front and rear, and the blow-off valve, which I did read up what it was, but now because I'm not technical, I'm not really certain, but it's something to do with acceleration, but do correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to go into options just briefly, and so yeah, you can choose if you want slow, normal or quick handling. We'll leave it on normal. Easy difficulty, just to make this game more reviewable, because on normal difficulty it is rather challenging even for old men like me. But we'll go into arcade mode and we'll have a little chat about what makes it so great. Now, first of all, you've got your two sub modes: Championship, which is where you unlock everything, and Practice, which speaks for itself. But we will go into Championship mode. Let's try that. So now, out of the two, I usually choose the Toyota Celica because it just looks good. Although some people will prefer the Lancia. Now, I race in third-person view. I like to see the car.
2, 1, go!
Now, the first thing to strike you is undoubtedly
Easy right,
the graphical quality.
easy left,
And it's very smooth. It's 30 frames a second, rock solid, without any stuttering or slowdown whatsoever.
easy right,
The game is just monstrous.
easy right, check one. Easy right, over jump. Easy left, easy right. Very long easy
Yes, I have gone a little quiet because I'm not good at talking and racing at the same time. Well, they say men aren't very good at multitasking. Here's a very good example of it.
finish.
Now, the idea is you need to come in 9th or 10th in this initial course in order to have any chance of winning, so you can unlock the extra track at least. And you have to come first on the extra track to unlock the extra car, which is another Lancia. It's a Lancia Stratos.
1, go!
Now, notice on this course, you see how beautiful these textures are for the tarmac. Now, there's a reason why I'm telling you that, because I will touch on something a little bit later on. And this review isn't going to be as long as yesterday's, don't worry. I noticed that Virtua Fighter 2 was about nearly a half hour long. This one won't be. Also because I don't like hearing myself too much. I tend to get on my own nerves. There you go. Look at that.
Medium left, baby. Wow. Long medium right. Wow. Caution, hairpin right. Check one.
I'm not doing very well here today. Ideally, you need to come third here at least. Third or fourth to have any chance of unlocking the other course. But, you know, it is unlockable with the cheat mode. But basically, if you come third in this one and first in the mountain course, you can unlock Lakeside, which is a visual feast. Now, talking about graphics, differences between this and the arcade version. First of all, this isn't really a direct port of the arcade. The developers had to go and start from scratch. And it wasn't developed using the SGL, believe it or not. For those that are uninitiated, it's the Sega Graphics Library, the operating system that they developed to make games on the Saturn. It wasn't used for this game because when they first began work on Sega Rally, the SGL hadn't been finished yet. So it's been developed without it, which makes it all the more impressive, really. I'm crap on bloody hairpins. Look at that. Rubbish. Get out of the way, you dirty sod. There you go. I love this town that you race through. It's just really very attractive looking, isn't it? So there's no way I'm going to unlock Lakeside, but it just means you'll have to have a look at it yourselves. But I will tell you it's very, very attractive to look at. So, the arcade version ran at 60 frames a second and, as you can see, in a much higher resolution. And it also had the rear view mirror, which the Sega Saturn version doesn't have, but you don't really tend to miss it. It actually makes the game better and more challenging. Because you can't really tell where the cars are coming from. You have to anticipate it. And so that really helps. And talking about graphics again, now first of all, the game is totally smooth and it never slows down at all, no matter what's going on screen. It doesn't miss a beat really, it's rock solid 30 frames and there's very, very little pop-up indeed. I know the actual replays don't look as attractive, but at least while you're racing, it's brilliant. Now there's also multiplayer in this, in the form of a split screen, which isn't ideal. I would prefer a link cable myself, but that wasn't implemented at that time. But the split screen is very impressive because despite losing a little bit of trackside detail, the game still runs smoothly. Again, it doesn't miss a beat. It's rock solid 30 frames, even if you're in split screen. Music is of course the usual Japanese pop, which is very fun to listen to, and it does. I think it does give the game kind of a relaxing feel while you're playing it, because they're not really very intrusive ditties. Now, the developers went to have a look at the Indonesian rally, I think, in order to try out the cars. They needed to actually get a feel of them, so they could, you know, transfer that knowledge into this game. So I think they drove some of the cars. Now, handling wise, this is pure arcade fun. There's no simulation here at all.
Well, you're gonna see your excellent run one more time.
Anybody can actually pick this game up and play it. Now, it does need a little bit of mastering, especially if you've never played a rally game before, which I hadn't when I first played it, and I thought it was impossible. But if you stick with it, it's beautiful. It has a very unusual and unexplainable hook to it. It hooks you in and it doesn't let you go. The gameplay is incredible. And in Japan, rally racing was kind of taboo when it came to video games. So they chose this genre very well, because usually in Japan you get your urban races and things like Tokyo Highway Battle and C1 Racing or something, but anyway. Racing Lagoon, for example, is another nighttime Tokyo racer. but Rally was just a very, very big release, a very important release for the Saturn. Now when we're talking of graphics, as you can see, replay aside, they're incredible. Now there's a little thing to sort of watch out for. If you are a collector and you're thinking of getting Sega Rally for the first time, if you've got a machine that plays all regions, avoid the US one, for the simple reason it's kind of incomplete. Unfortunately, the American version was rushed in order to get it on the shelves in time for the Christmas rush, so it's not very good. The versions to go for are the European version, which is being reviewed here. This is the PAL version, and the Japanese version. Now, when I mentioned the texture mapping on the forest track there, on the tarmac, you saw how gorgeous it was. Well, unfortunately, the American version had a few things lacking. Now, in particular on the Celica, there's a logo on the back of the car. That's missing in the US version. There's very little texture mapping on the forest track as well, on that tarmac section. And the frame rate isn't quite as good. I mean, it's still smooth, don't get me wrong, it is. But there's a slight increase in speed in the other versions. And of course there's added textures, a few graphical refinements, and there's also a big mountain range that's been added on the forest course. When you go around the hairpin, there's a nice big snowy mountain range that appears, which unfortunately in the American version it doesn't. So anyway, at least they took their time with the other versions. So they're the ones to actually go for. Now, of course, what we're going to talk about now, just briefly, is the big million-dollar question. Which is better, Sega Rally or Ridge Racer? Well, when Sega Rally came out, it had to compete with Ridge Racer Revolution. And let's click on no. Yes, unfortunately, it did compete with Ridge Racer Revolution. And now, which is better? Well, as usual, I'm going to get blasted by Sony fanboys here. They're not going to be very happy about it. But okay, first of all, I think it's a very close contest. It is indeed a very close contest. And the reason for that is that, first of all, Ridge Racer Revolution was an improvement over Ridge Racer. It had just one more extra track variation, a different track, and it had a link-up. So you could actually, you know, play link-up racing, which in my opinion is actually better. I would prefer it. And when you use the link-up cable, you could unlock the original track from the first Ridge Racer. And that made it fun. Now, Ridge Racer Revolution and the Ridge Racer games in general are just fun racing games. They involve, again, completely non-simulation, completely arcadey drifting. And it's just fun to race around these urban cityscapes, you know, by day or night. I think it's just brilliant myself. And I actually really love that. But I think once you complete Ridge Racer and you've unlocked all the cars, there's not much of an incentive to go back to it, unless you invite a few friends around so you can play Link Up. But other than that, there's not an incentive to actually go back to it. Whereas in Sega Rally, I mean, I can tell you, and I know lots and lots of other people that think the same, you keep going back to it to try and shave off those milliseconds off of your lap times. And I've been trying to improve my lap time on the desert course. I can't do any better than 53.05 seconds. I can't do any better than that. I know there are a lot of people that can. I'm undoubtedly following the wrong racing line. So if anyone is up to showing me how it's done, I'd be grateful. Post a video up or send me a link, put it in the comment section. Yeah, the thing with Sega Rally, you keep coming back to it because the handling is so refined. You know, there are so many different ways in which you can shave off those extra milliseconds, and you just keep wanting to do it. And the fact that it's rally racing on slightly different surfaces is just different than road racing. It's just more fun. The way it hooks you, you just can't explain it. It's the same as when you're playing Virtua Cop. Now that's going to be reviewed in the next review, because I am doing Sega's Big Three. So whether I review the first Virtua Cop or the second, either way, you just love playing Virtua Cop. You never ever get tired of it. You just keep coming back to it because it's just that brilliant. It has something about it, an unusual charm, an unusual perfect hook. It's the perfect addiction, and it's just unrivaled. You can't beat it, and I don't know how Sega do it, but for me, Sega is always Sega. So let's say 1 point goes to Revolution in terms of Link Up. I prefer Link Up, so I think Ridge Racer, Namco win on that one. But overall, this victory goes to Sega Rally, undoubtedly. Once you get, let's say, engulfed in it, it just won't let you go, and you just keep wanting to come back to it. And of course, it looks incredible as well. I mean, it's definitely the best racing game on the Saturn, without a doubt, bar none. It's even better than Daytona, I think. Now, Daytona was amazing when it first came out. Despite the pop-up, it was still charming, and it played the same as the arcade. And Sega Rally does that. It plays the same as the arcade. I know, you know, back in the day in the magazines they say gameplay first, graphics second. Well, in a way, but this is one example where the gameplay does come first and the graphics are second, but they're still brilliant if you think about it. Anyway, look, thanks for tuning in. You take care, and we'll look forward to Virtua Cop 1 or 2 or both. We'll see how I feel, but you'll get a review of one of the Virtua Cops. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and you know where you stand with retro. So I'd say ciao for now, e arrivederci.